Sometimes the cruelest thing a woman can believe is that love has a requirement she was born unable to meet. Naomi Carter heard the laughter before she heard her own name. She stood near the dining room doors of the Kang mansion, balancing a silver tray against one palm, while 7 candles burned on a chocolate birthday cake across the room. Golden chandelier lights spilled over marble floors, tailored suits, silk dresses, and people whose watches cost more than Naomi earned in a year. At the center of it all sat Lucas Kang, 7 years old, quiet beneath a paper birthday crown. His father stood several feet behind him. Adrian Kang did not need to raise his voice to command a room. At 43, the Korean Mafia Boss had built a reputation on controlled silence. His pale face rarely betrayed emotion. His black suit seemed almost severe against the warm gold of the ballroom. Men twice Naomi's size lowered their voices when Adrian passed. Lucas barely looked at him. "He needs more than this," Vanessa Caldwell said near the champagne table. Naomi continued arranging glasses. Vanessa was speaking to another guest, but not quietly enough. "Adrian needs a real family again." The woman beside her glanced toward Lucas. "He has Lucas." "That's not what I mean." Vanessa lifted her champagne. "A man like Adrian needs a wife. Another child. Someone who can give him an heir and make this house feel alive again." Naomi's fingers tightened around the stem of a glass. Vanessa's gaze drifted toward her. "Not a maid who happens to know how to comfort one lonely boy." The other woman gave an uncomfortable laugh. Naomi did not react. 20 years of working for wealthy families had taught her that dignity sometimes meant refusing to perform your pain for the people who caused it. She lifted the tray and walked away. But the words followed. Another child. An heir. A real family. Across the room, Lucas blew out his candles. Everyone applauded. Naomi smiled because he looked toward her first. Adrian noticed. He noticed something else too. Naomi's smile disappeared the instant she turned away. Hours later, the mansion finally fell quiet. Balloons floated beneath the ceiling. Half-empty champagne glasses waited on tables. Naomi stood alone in the kitchen, scraping untouched frosting from a plate when Adrian appeared in the doorway. "You left before the gifts." Naomi kept working. "The kitchen didn't clean itself." "That's not why." She rinsed the plate. "It's late, Mr. Kang." "Naomi." Her hands stopped. He rarely used her first name in that tone. "What did Vanessa say to you?" "Nothing worth repeating." "I heard part of it." Naomi turned off the faucet. "Then you don't need me to repeat it." Adrian stepped inside. She had no right. People with money usually think rights are something they purchase. A faint change touched his expression. "You're angry." "I'm tired." "That's not the same thing." Naomi gave a small, humorless smile. "You'd be surprised how often they travel together." She reached for another plate. Adrian took it gently from her hand and set it down. Naomi looked at him. He did not touch her. That mattered. "Why did it hurt?" he asked. Her face hardened. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Silence stretched between them. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, an old clock struck midnight. Naomi looked toward the dark window. Because Vanessa was right about one thing. Adrian waited. Naomi swallowed. The words had lived inside her for years, but saying them to him felt different. More dangerous. "I can't have children." Adrian's expression changed, though not in the way she expected. No pity. No discomfort. Just attention. Naomi forced herself to continue. "I found out years ago. Doctors. Tests. Treatments. None of it changed anything." Her voice lowered. "So if you think something is happening between us," Adrian became very still. Naomi finally looked at him. "It can't." "Why?" She almost laughed. "You heard Vanessa." "I'm asking you." Naomi's eyes burned. "Because men like you need heirs. Men like me. Powerful men. Men with names that have to continue." She glanced toward the ceiling, toward the floor where Lucas slept. "You already lost his mother. Someday you'll want another wife. Another child. A proper family." Adrian stared at her for several seconds. Naomi hated how exposed she felt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said anything." She turned to leave. "Naomi." She stopped. Adrian's voice was quieter now. "Who told you I was looking for another heir?" Naomi slowly turned back. "What?" He took one step closer. "You keep telling me what you can't give me." His eyes stayed on hers. "But I haven't heard you ask what I want." Naomi's heartbeat stumbled. "Then what do you want?" For once, Adrian Kang, the man who always calculated every word before allowing it into the world, answered without hesitation. You. Naomi forgot how to breathe. Naomi Carter had learned years ago that a woman could survive almost anything once she stopped expecting an apology. What she had never learned was what to do when someone looked at the wound and refused to treat it like a defect. You. Adrian's answer remained between them in the quiet kitchen. Naomi stared at him. The word should have felt romantic. Instead, it frightened her. Don't say that. Adrian's expression barely changed. Why? Because you don't know what you're saying. I rarely have that problem. This isn't business. I know. Naomi stepped away from him, putting the marble island between them. You have a 7-year-old son. You have a family name people expect you to continue. You have Vanessa telling half this city that she belongs beside you. Vanessa doesn't decide what belongs beside me. Neither do I. Adrian watched her. I didn't say you did. Naomi looked down. Then forget I told you. I won't. You should. Why? The question was gentle this time, and that was what finally broke through her defenses. Naomi gripped the edge of the counter. Because I already spent 6 years learning what happens when a man says children don't matter until they do. Adrian said nothing. The kitchen disappeared from her mind. In its place came a smaller apartment 12 years earlier. White walls, second-hand furniture, a bathroom counter crowded with pregnancy tests she had stopped believing in. Naomi had been 26 when she married Michael Carter. Back then, she imagined motherhood as something that would simply arrive when they were ready. First came a year of trying. Then another. Doctors replaced hope with appointments. Blood tests. Procedures. Waiting rooms filled with women staring at the floor because eye contact felt too intimate. Eventually, a specialist sat across from Naomi and Michael and explained that her chances of carrying a child were extraordinarily low. Michael held her hand during the drive home. It doesn't change us, he said. For a while, Naomi believed him. Then came the small sentences. My mother keeps asking. Maybe we should try one more specialist. I always imagined having a son. None of them sounded cruel alone. Together, they became a verdict. One evening Naomi found Michael standing beside the kitchen window. He didn't turn around when he said it. Maybe with someone else, I could still have a family. Naomi remembered how quiet she became. You already have a family. Michael finally looked at her. His silence answered first. Their marriage lasted another 4 months on paper. In reality, it ended in that kitchen. Years later, Naomi kept his last name because changing it required paperwork she didn't have the energy to complete. What she couldn't discard so easily was the belief he had left behind, that loving her meant surrendering something essential. He didn't leave because I couldn't cook, Naomi told Adrian now, or because I was unfaithful or cruel. He left because my body couldn't give him the life he wanted. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then he was a fool. Naomi gave a tired smile. That's easy for you to say. Why? Because you already have Lucas. The name changed the room. Upstairs, the boy slept beneath a ceiling painted with stars, surrounded by everything money could buy except the woman whose photograph still stood beside his bed. Naomi's voice softened. You know what I thought the first week I worked here? Adrian waited. I thought Lucas was spoiled. A faint smile touched his mouth. He was grieving. The smile vanished. That's different. Naomi remembered the first time she found Lucas hiding beneath the dining table after his mother's death, refusing dinner, refusing his father, refusing everyone. Naomi hadn't dragged him out. She simply sat on the floor beside the table and ate half a peanut butter sandwich in silence. 10 minutes later, a small hand reached from beneath the table for the other half. Adrian had watched from the hallway. He trusts you, Adrian said. That doesn't make me his mother. I never asked you to be. Not yet. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. Naomi hated herself for saying it, but fear had momentum now. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe you see how he looks at me and think I can fill the empty chair. Adrian became completely still. Is that what you think I want from you? Naomi couldn't answer. He walked around the island but stopped several feet away, leaving the distance hers to close. Lucas had a mother, he said. Her name was Claire. He loved her. I loved her. Nothing you do will erase that, and nothing I feel for you requires you to replace her. Naomi's eyes burned. Adrian continued, quieter now. And if you never give me another child, Naomi, that doesn't make you less of anything. She looked away. You don't know what it feels like to hear that after spending years believing the opposite. No, Adrian did not pretend otherwise. I don't. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Both turned. Lucas stood barefoot in the doorway, birthday crown crooked on his dark hair, clutching the small blanket he hadn't slept without since his mother died. His eyes moved from Adrian to Naomi. "Are you leaving?" Naomi's breath caught. "Not tonight, sweetheart." Lucas looked at her for a long moment. People always say not tonight when they mean soon. Adrian froze. Naomi did too. Then Lucas turned and walked back toward the stairs. Naomi watched him disappear into the darkness. She had spent years believing the deepest pain in that house belonged to a woman who could never become a mother. Suddenly she understood there was a little boy upstairs carrying the opposite wound. He had already had a mother, and he had learned that loving someone did not stop them from disappearing. The most feared man in the city could make armed men lower their eyes, but he could not make his 7-year-old son say goodnight. Adrian Kang stood outside Lucas's bedroom 20 minutes after Naomi had gone downstairs, one hand resting against the doorframe. Inside, a small lamp cast pale stars across the ceiling. Lucas lay beneath his blanket facing the wall. "You're supposed to be asleep." "I'm trying." Adrian stepped inside. "Naomi said you had too much cake." "Naomi says lots of things." The answer carried more anger than a 7-year-old should have known how to hide. Adrian sat on the edge of the bed. "You asked if she was leaving." Lucas pulled the blanket higher. "She said not tonight." "She isn't leaving tonight." "That's not what I asked." Adrian went still. Children had an irritating way of walking straight through defenses adults spent decades building. "Why do you think she's leaving?" Lucas finally turned. "Because people leave when they get tired of being sad here." Adrian felt the words somewhere beneath his ribs. On the night Claire died 2 years earlier, Adrian had stood in this same room and promised his son that everything would be all right. It was the first lie he'd ever told Lucas. Nothing had been all right. Claire had been the warmth in a house designed for power. After her funeral, Adrian returned to work because work obeyed rules. Grief did not. He hired tutors, therapists, chefs, drivers, security, anyone money suggested might help. Lucas responded by speaking less. Adrian mistook providing for parenting because providing was something he knew how to do. Then Naomi arrived. She had been hired as household staff, nothing more. On her 3rd week, Adrian found her sitting on the dining room floor beside the long mahogany table. Lucas was underneath it. "What are you doing?" Adrian asked. Naomi looked up while eating half a peanut butter sandwich. "Having lunch." "On the floor." "The company is better down here." A small hand appeared from beneath the table. Naomi placed the other half of the sandwich into it. Adrian stared. "He's supposed to eat at the table. Today he is eating under it." "That's inappropriate." Naomi shrugged. "So is starving." Adrian should have fired her. Instead, he walked away. 10 minutes later, he heard Lucas laugh for the first time in 4 months. After that, the changes came quietly. Naomi never told Lucas to stop missing his mother. When he refused to look at photographs of Claire, Naomi didn't remove them. When he woke from nightmares, she didn't say there was nothing to fear. She sat outside his door until his breathing slowed. Once, Lucas asked her whether dead people forgot you. Naomi answered, "Not if love remembers for them." Adrian heard it from the hallway and spent the next hour alone in his study. He began noticing other things too. Naomi never sat in Claire's chair at breakfast, never moved Claire's photographs, never called Lucas pet names his mother had used. She was not trying to become necessary. Somehow, that made her necessary. Now Adrian looked at his son beneath the painted stars. "Naomi isn't your mother," he said carefully. Lucas frowned. "I know, and nobody expects her to be." "I know that too." "Then why are you afraid she'll leave?" Lucas stared at him as if the answer were obvious. "Because I love her." Adrian forgot to breathe. Lucas turned back toward the wall. "Mom loved me, and she left. Your mother didn't choose to leave." "I know." His voice became smaller. "But she's still gone." Adrian looked down at his hands. There were problems those hands knew how to solve. Contracts, debts, betrayals, men who mistook patience for weakness. None of those skills mattered here. "Loving someone doesn't guarantee they stay," Adrian said. Lucas looked at him again. "That's a terrible answer." A surprised laugh escaped Adrian. "Yes. Naomi gives better answers. Usually." Lucas studied his father's face. "Do you love her too?" Adrian's smile disappeared. Downstairs, Naomi stood alone in the kitchen, unaware that the question she had been running from had just reached the one person Adrian could not intimidate into silence. "Go to sleep," Adrian said. Lucas narrowed his eyes. That's not an answer. You're 7. Still not an answer. Adrian pulled the blanket gently over his son's shoulder. Good night, Lucas. He stood. Dad. Adrian stopped at the doorway. If Naomi can't have kids, Lucas hesitated. Does that mean she can't be family? Adrian turned around slowly. There was no accusation in the boy's face. Only confusion. Somewhere along the way, adults had taught even a 7-year-old that family came with rules. Adrian walked back to the bed and crouched beside him. No, what? It doesn't mean that. Lucas considered this. Good. He closed his eyes. Because she already feels like family. Adrian remained beside the bed after Lucas fell asleep. For months, he had believed Naomi was helping repair something broken inside his son. Tonight, he understood how selfish that thought had been. Naomi was not medicine. She was not a replacement mother. She was not a solution to the loneliness in his house. She was a woman who had entered their lives without demanding a place in them, and somehow made both father and son want to make one for her. Adrian looked toward the dark hallway. For the first time, he understood that wanting Naomi was the easy part. The harder question was whether he could love her without turning that love into another job she was expected to perform. You. The word followed Naomi upstairs long after Adrian stopped speaking. It should have been the answer every lonely woman dreamed of hearing. Instead, Naomi lay awake until nearly 3 in the morning wondering how one syllable could feel more dangerous than rejection. By breakfast, she had rebuilt every wall. Her uniform was pressed. Her hair was neat. Her expression revealed nothing. Adrian entered the dining room at 7 precisely and found Lucas pushing scrambled eggs around his plate while Naomi poured coffee. Good morning, Mr. Kang. Adrian stopped. Mr. Kang, not Adrian. He understood immediately. Morning. Naomi set his cup beside him without meeting his eyes. 1 teaspoon of sugar. No cream. She remembered everything about him. That was part of the problem. Lucas looked between them. Are you mad at each other? No. Naomi answered too quickly. Adrian sat down. We're having a complicated morning. Lucas frowned. Adults say complicated when they don't want kids to know something. Naomi nearly dropped the coffee pot. Adrian hid the beginning of a smile behind his cup. Eat your breakfast. See. Lucas muttered. Complicated. Naomi escaped into the kitchen. Adrian followed several minutes later. You're avoiding me. She continued arranging dishes. I'm working. You weren't this interested in dishes yesterday. Yesterday you hadn't said something reckless. Adrian's pale face hardened slightly. Wanting you isn't reckless. Naomi finally turned. It is if you don't understand why. Then explain it to me. I already did. You told me why you're afraid. You didn't tell me why that means I can't love you. The word love stopped her. Adrian seemed almost surprised he had used it. Naomi stared at him. Don't. You keep saying that. Because you keep turning feelings into decisions before you've understood them. Adrian fell silent. Naomi lowered her voice. Lucas loves me. Yes. He's grieving. Yes. And you are terrified of failing him. Adrian's jaw tightened. Be careful. The warning would have frightened almost anyone else in the city. Naomi simply looked at him. That's exactly what I mean. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Meaning, you're used to people stopping when your voice changes. She stepped closer. I'm not one of your men. Silence. No, Adrian said. You're not. Naomi's expression softened, but she didn't retreat. I need to know that when you look at me, you see Naomi. Not the woman who gets Lucas to eat. Not the woman who sits with him after nightmares. Not somebody convenient enough to fill the space Claire left behind. Adrian looked toward the dining room. Lucas's spoon tapped softly against porcelain. I would never ask you to replace Claire. Maybe not with words. Naomi's eyes shone. But people can ask things without saying them. Adrian had no immediate answer. For a man who survived by always having one, that frightened him. Naomi untied her apron. I'm taking Lucas to school, then I'm using one of my personal days. Adrian looked at the apron in her hands. Because of this conversation? Because I need room to hear my own thoughts without yours filling the house. He wanted to tell her she didn't need permission. He almost said the driver would take her wherever she wanted. Both responses sounded like commands. So Adrian forced himself to ask, is there anything you need from me? Naomi studied him, surprised by the question. Space. Adrian nodded once. All right. That afternoon, the mansion felt wrong without her. Not messy, not inefficient. Wrong. Adrian discovered the distinction around 6 when he entered the library and found Lucas sitting on the rug with colored pencils scattered around him. "Homework?" Adrian asked. No, Lucas continued drawing. Adrian sat opposite him. The picture showed 3 figures outside a large house. One small, one tall and black, one woman in blue. Adrian recognized Naomi immediately. "Who's that?" "You know. I want you to tell me." Lucas sighed. "Naomi." Adrian pointed to the woman. "Why is she holding your hand?" "Because I wanted her to." Adrian's gaze moved to his own figure. He was standing slightly apart. "Why am I over there?" Lucas shrugged. "That's where you always are." The answer struck harder than Adrian expected. He stared at the drawing. "Lucas, what? Do you want Naomi to be your mother?" The pencil stopped. Lucas looked offended. "No," Adrian blinked. "No, I had a mom." "I know. Naomi isn't mom." Lucas returned to coloring. "She's Naomi." Something inside Adrian shifted. The distinction was so simple a child understood it better than he did. "Then what is she to you?" Lucas thought carefully. "Someone I don't want to lose." Adrian looked at the empty chair beside him. Hours later, Naomi returned. She entered through the staff door out of habit and found Adrian waiting in the hallway. "How was your day?" he asked. "Quiet." "Good." She expected him to continue. He didn't. Naomi began walking past him. "That's all." Adrian nodded. "You asked for space." She stopped. For the first time, the man who controlled almost everything around him was deliberately controlling only himself. Naomi turned back. Adrian met her eyes. "I meant what I said last night," he told her. "But you were right about something." "Only one thing." A faint smile touched his mouth. "For now." Then it disappeared. "I know I want you. I don't yet know whether I've separated that from what you mean to Lucas." Naomi's expression changed. It wasn't the answer she wanted. It was better. It was honest. Adrian continued. "So I'm not asking you for anything." Naomi swallowed. "And if you discover you only needed me because of him?" Adrian looked toward the staircase, then back at her. "Then I will live with that truth without making it your punishment." Naomi's eyes filled. Neither moved closer. Neither touched. But for the first time since Adrian said you, Naomi felt something more dangerous than hope. She felt respected. Naomi had spent years believing rejection was the worst thing love could do to a woman. She was beginning to understand that being needed for the wrong reason could hurt just as much. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened between her and Adrian. That was precisely what made everything harder. He did not corner her in quiet hallways. He did not repeat what he had said in the kitchen. He did not use Lucas as an excuse to keep her close. Instead, Adrian did something Naomi had rarely seen powerful men do after being told no. He respected the distance. Yet Lucas noticed it. At breakfast, Naomi sat farther from Adrian. During dinner, she left before coffee. When Lucas asked her to stay for a movie one evening, Naomi hesitated long enough for the boy's smile to disappear. "You don't want to?" "Of course I do." "Then why do you keep looking at Dad?" Naomi glanced toward Adrian. He was standing near the library doors. He said nothing. That silence was permission, not pressure. Somehow, it still frightened her. "I'll stay for 20 minutes, Naomi said. Lucas smiled. 40 minutes later, he was asleep against her shoulder. Naomi sat frozen on the sofa while an old animated movie flickered across the dark room. Adrian entered quietly. His eyes moved from his sleeping son to Naomi. "I'll take him." "Don't wake him." Adrian crouched and lifted Lucas carefully. The boy stirred, then buried his face against his father's shoulder. Naomi watched something soften in Adrian's expression. Not the mafia boss. Not the man whose name could close businesses with a phone call. Just a father carrying a sleepy child upstairs. That image followed Naomi into the kitchen. Adrian returned 10 minutes later. "He asked me something last week," he said. Naomi looked up. "What?" "Whether you could be family if you couldn't have children." Naomi went completely still. "You told him?" "No," Adrian shook his head. "He heard enough of our conversation to understand." Shame crossed Naomi's face. "What did you say?" "That of course you could." Her eyes filled despite herself. "He's 7. Apparently 7 is old enough to understand something adults keep making unnecessarily complicated." Naomi looked away. Adrian continued. "He also told me he doesn't want you to be his mother." Naomi's face changed. Adrian saw the hurt before she could hide it. "That's not what you think. You don't have to explain." "I do." He stepped closer, but left several feet between them. "He said he already had a mother." Naomi swallowed. "He's right." Then he said, "You're Naomi." Silence. "Just Naomi?" Apparently, that's a position important enough to him. A tear escaped before Naomi could stop it. She wiped it away quickly. That boy is going to ruin my reputation. Adrian almost smiled. Mine too. The warmth lasted only seconds. Naomi looked toward the staircase. That's exactly why I need to leave. Adrian's expression hardened. What? I requested my employment records this morning. Why? Because this isn't sustainable. For whom? For me. Adrian became silent. Naomi untied her apron slowly. Every day I stay, Lucas gets more attached. Every day you and I pretend nothing is happening. Something is happening anyway. Then stop pretending. And become what? Her voice sharpened. Your girlfriend? Your maid? Lucas's almost mother? The woman everyone whispers you chose because she was already conveniently inside the house. I don't care what they say. I do. Naomi's eyes flashed. Because you're not the one they'll reduce. That stopped him. They won't say Adrian Kang fell in love. They'll say the black maid worked her way into the widower's bed. They'll say I used your grieving son to get there. Adrian's jaw tightened. Anyone who says that, what? You'll threaten them. Naomi stepped closer. And then what? I spend my life protected by your fear instead of respected for who I am. Adrian had no answer. Naomi's voice softened. And there's something worse. What? One day Lucas might call me mom. Adrian watched her carefully. And I might love hearing it. Her voice broke. Then I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether you fell in love with me, or whether you saw how much he needed me and decided I could fill Claire's empty chair. Naomi, can you tell me right now that isn't part of it? Adrian opened his mouth. Nothing came. Naomi closed her eyes. His silence hurt, but she respected it more than a convenient lie. That's what I thought. I'm trying to understand it. I know. She nodded. And you need to understand it without me standing here making the answer easier. Adrian looked at the apron in her hands. You're resigning. Yes. One word. No drama. Somehow it sounded louder than a gunshot. When? Friday. Lucas will be devastated. Naomi's eyes filled. I know. So will I. She looked at him. I know that too. Adrian stepped toward her, then stopped himself. Naomi noticed. Again, he left the final distance untouched. If I ask you to stay, he said, will that make this worse? Naomi took a slow breath. Yes. Adrian nodded. It cost him something. She could see that. Then I won't. Naomi folded the apron over her arm. At the doorway, she stopped. Adrian. Yes. Figure out how to be his father without me. He frowned. Naomi looked toward the staircase. If you still want me, after you no longer need me to save him, her eyes returned to his. Then come find me. She walked away. Adrian remained alone beneath the cold kitchen lights. For the first time since Claire died, there would soon be no woman standing between him and his son's grief. And Adrian understood that Naomi had not given him an ultimatum. She had given him something far more difficult. A chance to discover whether his love could survive without needing her to perform a role. The first evening without Naomi, the Kang mansion looked exactly the same. That was what made it unbearable. Every glass was polished. Every hallway was silent. Dinner arrived at 7. Security changed shifts at 8. Nothing had broken, yet Adrian could feel the absence of one woman in every room. Naomi had left that afternoon carrying 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. She had hugged Lucas at the front door and promised she was not disappearing from his life. Lucas had not cried. He had simply asked, "Are you leaving because of us?" Naomi crouched until they were eye level. "I'm leaving because sometimes grown-ups need to figure out who they are when nobody else is asking them to be something." Lucas looked confused. "Will you come back?" Naomi's eyes had moved toward Adrian. "I don't know." Adrian had wanted to interrupt. To promise Lucas she would return. To tell Naomi there was no reason to go. Instead, he remembered her words. Figure out how to be his father without me. So he stood there and let her leave. Now Lucas sat at the dining table staring at an empty chair. "Your food is getting cold," Adrian said. "I'm not hungry. You need to eat." Naomi never said that. Adrian's jaw tightened. What did Naomi say? Lucas looked at the plate. She asked why I wasn't hungry. The answer irritated Adrian because it was so simple. He sat across from his son. "All right. Why aren't you hungry?" Lucas shrugged. "I miss her." Adrian looked toward the empty chair. "So do I." Lucas lifted his eyes, surprised. It was the first honest conversation they had shared about Naomi since she left. "Does it hurt?" "Yes." "Good." Adrian raised an eyebrow. Good, because then I'm not the only one. Something inside Adrian cracked quietly. He moved from his usual seat at the head of the table and sat beside Lucas instead. Do you want dinner? Lucas shook his head. What do you want? Peanut butter sandwich. Adrian stared at him. At dinner. Naomi let me. Naomi also understood kitchens better than I do. Lucas almost smiled. 20 minutes later, Adrian Kang stood in the kitchen holding a butter knife as if it were an unfamiliar weapon. One of his guards entered, stopped, and wisely backed out without speaking. Adrian burned the first piece of toast. Lucas laughed. The second sandwich survived. They ate it together at the kitchen island. It was not elegant. It was the best dinner they'd had alone in 2 years. The days that followed were uncomfortable by design. Adrian began driving Lucas to school twice a week. The first morning, they spent 15 minutes in silence. The second, Lucas asked why Adrian always wore black. It's practical. You look like you're going to a funeral every day. Adrian glanced at him. Anything else you'd like to criticize before school? Your music. By Friday, Lucas was choosing the playlist. At night, Adrian stopped sending household staff when Lucas had nightmares. He went himself. Sometimes he knew what to say. Usually he didn't. So he sat beside the bed. Naomi had taught him that silence could be company when it wasn't being used as punishment. 3 weeks passed. The empty chair remained empty, but something else changed. Lucas started talking to Adrian before asking for Naomi, not instead of her. That distinction mattered. One rainy evening, father and son sat on the library floor assembling a model airplane badly. Adrian had accidentally glued one wing backward. Lucas stared at it. Naomi would have fixed that. Naomi isn't here. I know. Lucas looked at his father. I think that's why you're getting better. Adrian's hand stopped. At model airplanes? At being dad. The room became very quiet. Lucas returned to the crooked wing. Did Naomi leave because we loved her wrong? Adrian froze. What makes you ask that? She loved us, but she looked sad. Adrian stared at his son. 7 years old. Bare feet. Glue on his fingers. Somehow holding a question Adrian had spent 3 weeks avoiding. Maybe, Adrian said slowly. We needed her so much that we forgot to ask whether being needed was hurting her. Lucas frowned. Can loving someone hurt them? If you make your love into a job, they have to do. Lucas considered this. Did we? Adrian could have protected himself. He could have blamed grief, Claire's death, loneliness, Naomi's own choices. Instead, he looked at the backward wing. I think I did. Lucas became quiet. Can you fix it? Adrian thought the boy meant the airplane. Then he saw Lucas's face. I don't know. You fix everything. No, Adrian's voice softened. I make people obey me. That's different. Lucas absorbed that with the solemnity children reserved for truths adults hated admitting. Then he asked, Are you going to make Naomi come back? Adrian looked toward the empty chair beside the fireplace. 3 weeks earlier, his answer would have been yes before he even understood the question. Tonight, it was different. No, Lucas looked worried. Why? Because if she comes back, I want it to be because she chooses us. Lucas thought for a moment. What if she doesn't? Adrian's pale face tightened. Then we'll miss her. Forever. Maybe. Lucas leaned against him. Adrian placed an arm around his son. No solution. No order. No guarantee. Just acceptance. On the table nearby, Adrian's phone lit up with Naomi's name. He stared at it, but didn't reach immediately. It was the first message she had sent since leaving. 3 words appeared on the screen. How is Lucas? Adrian looked at his son tucked against his side. Then he typed 4 words back. You should ask him. A moment later, the phone rang. Adrian handed it to Lucas. The boy's entire face changed when he heard Naomi's voice. Adrian stood and quietly walked away, giving them privacy. Halfway to the door, Lucas called after him. Dad. Adrian turned. Lucas held out the phone. Naomi wants to know how you're doing too. Adrian stopped. And for the first time since she left, the empty chair no longer felt like proof that he had lost her. It felt like proof that he was finally learning not to fill it for her. Money had solved nearly every problem Adrian Kang had ever been allowed to see. Naomi Carter was teaching him to recognize the ones money created. 5 weeks after she left the mansion, Adrian sat behind the black walnut desk in his study while Vanessa Caldwell placed a check in front of him. She did it casually, as though the number written across it were no more significant than a dinner reservation. Adrian didn't touch it. What's this? Vanessa crossed one elegant leg over the other. A practical solution. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows behind him. To what? Naomi. Adrian's pale face became unreadable. Vanessa continued before instinct warned her not to. Lucas still asks about her. Your household manager says you've been rearranging your schedule around school pickups and bedtime. You've been questioning my staff? I'm concerned about you. That wasn't my question. Vanessa exhaled. Fine. I asked. Adrian looked at the check again. And this? Enough for Naomi to live comfortably for several years. Why? Offer her a different arrangement. What arrangement? Vanessa leaned forward. She doesn't have to return as a maid. Call her a companion. A private caregiver. Whatever makes everyone comfortable. Adrian's expression did not move. You want me to pay her to come back for Lucas? I want the boy happy. No, Adrian's voice was quiet. You want the inconvenience gone. Vanessa's mouth tightened. Does the distinction matter if Lucas gets what he needs? Adrian looked at her for several seconds. 5 weeks earlier, he might have understood the logic. Identify a problem. Assign a price. Remove the problem. That was how his world functioned. But now he saw Naomi standing in the kitchen with her apron folded over one arm. If you still want me after you no longer need me to save him, then come find me. Take it back. Vanessa stared at him. Adrian, the check. Don't be sentimental. Something colder entered his eyes. Vanessa noticed. So did the guard standing beyond the study door. Careful, Adrian said. Vanessa's voice dropped. About what? Adrian rose. He did not shout. Men in his world knew shouting usually meant someone had already lost control. Adrian rarely did. You still think everyone has a price because nobody ever taught you the difference between service and devotion. Vanessa's face flushed. She was your employee. Yes. She cleaned your house. Yes. She cared for your son because you paid her. Adrian looked toward the check. At first. And now you're confusing gratitude with love. That accusation would once have stopped him. This time it didn't. I considered that. Vanessa blinked. What? Naomi made me consider it. Adrian walked around the desk. So I did something I don't enjoy. Which is, I waited. Vanessa gave a bitter laugh. 5 weeks. 5 weeks without Naomi repairing my relationship with Lucas. 5 weeks without her putting him to bed. Without her sitting between us at dinner. Without her telling me what he needs before I bother asking him. His voice softened despite himself. And my son and I are closer than we've been since Claire died. Vanessa stared at him. Then you don't need Naomi anymore. Adrian's eyes lifted. Exactly. Silence. Vanessa finally understood. Adrian picked up the check. For 1 second she seemed relieved. Then he tore it in half. Once. Twice. The pieces fell onto the desk. Don't ever put a price on her again. Vanessa stood. You're going to chase a maid. No, Adrian's answer came immediately. I'm not going to chase anyone. Then what are you going to do? Respect what she asked for. Vanessa looked almost amused. And if she chooses someone else? Adrian's jaw tightened. That possibility still hurt. Then she chooses someone else. Vanessa searched his face as if trying to find the man who would have ordered the world into a more convenient shape. He wasn't there. You've changed. I'm trying. Because of her. Adrian shook his head. Because she showed me what needed changing. Vanessa left without saying goodbye. Adrian remained in the study staring at the torn check. His phone buzzed. A message from Lucas's school reminded him about the parent reading afternoon on Friday. 5 weeks earlier, he would have sent an assistant. On Friday, Adrian sat in a classroom chair far too small for him, while 12 children gathered on a carpet. Lucas stared at him with open disbelief. You came. Adrian adjusted the children's book in his hands. You asked. You always have meetings. I moved them. Lucas smiled. Adrian read badly. He gave every character the same voice. The children complained. Lucas laughed so hard he nearly fell sideways. When the hour ended, father and son walked toward the car together. Naomi would have done the voices better, Lucas said. Almost certainly. Do you still miss her? Adrian looked ahead. Every day. Lucas kicked a pebble across the sidewalk. Then why don't you tell her? Adrian stopped. Lucas turned. Because she asked me to figure out whether I wanted her or needed her. Did you? Adrian looked at his son. Yes. Which one? Wanted. Lucas considered the answer. That's good. Adrian smiled faintly. I hope so. So tell her. It's not that simple. Lucas frowned. Adults say that when they're scared. Adrian stared at him. You spend too much time listening to Naomi. Maybe you didn't spend enough. Adrian laughed quietly. That evening he returned to the mansion and found an envelope on his desk. Naomi's name was written on the return address. Inside was the final key to the staff entrance and a short note. I found one of these in my coat. Thought you might need it. Adrian turned the small brass key between his fingers. She had returned everything belonging to the house. Everything except the place she occupied inside it. And for the first time, Adrian knew with absolute certainty that he did not want Naomi back because Lucas needed her. He wanted her back even if she never cooked another meal, comforted another nightmare, or crossed the staff in trance again. He reached for his phone, then stopped. Naomi had asked for space, not silence forever. But before he could decide whether calling respected that boundary, Lucas appeared in the doorway. Dad, what? Lucas looked at the key in his hand. Naomi's coming tomorrow. Adrian froze. Why? Lucas smiled. She said she has one last box upstairs. The key went completely still between Adrian's fingers. Tomorrow, Naomi would walk into the mansion again. And this time, Adrian finally knew what he wanted from her. Nothing she was required to give. Naomi had imagined returning to the Kang mansion would feel like stepping backward. Instead, the first thing she noticed was that nobody opened the door for her. Adrian did it himself. He stood beneath the stone archway in a charcoal sweater instead of a suit, his pale face unreadable in the cold morning light. For several seconds, neither spoke. Naomi held an empty cardboard box against her hip. I'm here for the things in my room. I know. Adrian stepped aside. No attempt to touch her. No speech prepared to stop her. Come in. Naomi crossed the threshold. The mansion looked unchanged. Marble floors, dark wood, expensive silence. But something felt different. Where's Lucas? Music room. Tutor. Adrian shook his head. Me. Naomi stopped walking. You? Try not to sound terrified. A piano note crashed somewhere down the hall. Then another. Naomi almost smiled. Should I call emergency services? Give us 10 minutes. Another terrible chord echoed through the house. 5. Adrian's mouth twitched. They reached the music room. Naomi stopped at the doorway. Lucas sat at the piano while Adrian's abandoned coffee rested beside a stack of beginner sheet music. Several notes had been marked in Adrian's handwriting. No nanny. No tutor. No employee translating fatherhood for him. Just evidence that Adrian had been showing up. Lucas turned. His face transformed. Naomi. He jumped from the bench and ran toward her. Naomi's arms instinctively began to open. Lucas. Adrian's voice stopped him gently. The boy looked back. Adrian nodded toward Naomi. Ask. Lucas frowned. Ask what? Whether she wants a hug. Naomi looked at Adrian. He didn't look back. His attention remained on his son. Lucas turned toward her again. Can I hug you? Something tightened painfully in Naomi's chest. Yes. Lucas crashed into her arms. Naomi closed her eyes and held him. She had expected guilt. Instead, she felt love without assignment. When Lucas finally stepped back, he studied her carefully. Are you still leaving? I don't work here anymore. His face fell. Naomi touched his shoulder. That doesn't mean I stopped caring about you. Dad said that. Naomi glanced at Adrian. Did he? Lucas nodded. He said people don't have to work for us to matter to us. Adrian suddenly found the piano keys extremely interesting. Naomi swallowed. Your father has been learning things. He's still bad at sandwiches. Some tragedies can't be fixed. I heard that, Adrian said. Lucas laughed. Naomi had almost forgotten what the house sounded like when that laugh lived inside it. She went upstairs for her final box. 20 minutes later, she returned carrying books, an old sweater, and a framed photograph of her mother. Voices reached her from the music room. She stopped before entering. Are you going to ask Naomi to come back? Lucas asked. Adrian answered after a pause. No, Naomi's fingers tightened around the box. Why not? Because she already told me what she needed. But you miss her. Yes. And I miss her. I know. Lucas sounded frustrated. Then why can't we tell her to stay? Adrian's voice softened. Because loving someone doesn't mean turning what we want into something they owe us. Naomi closed her eyes. 5 weeks earlier, Adrian would have solved the problem with an order, a contract, or money. Now he was teaching his son the lesson she had been trying to teach herself for years. She entered the room. Lucas looked embarrassed. You hurt. Enough. Naomi set down the box. Lucas approached her more slowly this time. I know you're not my mom. The sentence hit a place Naomi thought she had protected. She managed to smile. I know. I already had a mom. Yes, you did. Dad says nobody gets replaced. Naomi's eyes moved toward Adrian. He remained silent. Lucas continued. But I love you too. Naomi's breath caught. You do? Yeah. He shrugged with the awkward honesty of a child. You're Naomi. Tears filled her eyes. Lucas opened his arms, then remembered. He stopped. Can I? Naomi laughed through the tears. Come here. She pulled him close. Adrian looked away, giving them privacy even while standing in the same room. A few minutes later, Lucas went upstairs to find a drawing he wanted Naomi to take with her. The room became quiet. Naomi wiped beneath her eyes. You've been busy. Adrian leaned against the piano, mostly making terrible sandwiches. Lucas seems different. So am I. Naomi looked at him. I can see that. Adrian's expression changed slightly. Vanessa came here last week. Naomi's shoulders stiffened. Why? She offered money to bring you back. Naomi went still. As what? A caregiver. Companion. She suggested several respectable words for purchasing someone's devotion. Hurt crossed Naomi's face. And what did you say? Adrian reached into his pocket and placed 4 torn pieces of a check on the piano. Naomi stared at them. I told her you weren't for sale. Her eyes lifted. You didn't threaten her? I considered it. Despite herself, Naomi smiled. Growth. Painful growth. Then Adrian became serious. But I realized something afterward. Naomi waited. You told me to learn how to be Lucas's father without you. Yes, I did. His voice lowered. And now I know the difference. Between what? Adrian looked directly into her eyes. Needing you and wanting you. Naomi's heartbeat changed. He didn't move closer. Lucas doesn't need a replacement mother. Adrian paused. And I don't need a woman to give me another child. Naomi stared at him. Then what do you need? Adrian shook his head. That's the wrong question. He opened one hand between them, palm upward, but left the distance untouched. The question is whether there's anything you want from me. Naomi looked at his waiting hand. For years, men had told her what they wanted her body, her labor, her love, her future to provide. Adrian Kang was finally asking what she wanted instead. Before she could answer, Lucas's footsteps raced down the stairs. Naomi did not take Adrian's hand. Not yet. But for the first time, she didn't step away from it either. The hardest thing Naomi Carter had ever done was not leaving Adrian Kang. It was believing she could return without owing him anything. 3 days after collecting her final box, she met him in a small riverside park far from the mansion, the guards, and the world that usually moved whenever Adrian lifted a hand. Autumn leaves scraped softly across the pavement. Naomi sat on a wooden bench holding 2 cups of coffee. Adrian approached alone. No black SUV waited at the curb. No security man followed 20 feet behind him. You're late, Naomi said. Adrian checked his watch. By 40 seconds. Still late. This relationship is becoming unreasonable. Naomi smiled despite herself and handed him a cup. 1 teaspoon of sugar. Adrian looked at it. You remembered. Don't make it meaningful. Too late. They walked beside the river without touching. For several minutes, they discussed Lucas. School. His terrible piano playing. The model airplane Adrian had finally repaired after gluing the wing backward. It was easy until Naomi stopped walking. Adrian stopped too. I need to ask you something. Ask. Naomi looked toward the water. What happens 10 years from now? Adrian waited. When Lucas is 17. When he doesn't need bedtime stories or someone making peanut butter sandwiches. When this house isn't centered around raising a little boy anymore. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. What happens when you look at me and remember you could have had another child? Adrian's expression changed. Naomi continued before courage failed her. What if you regret choosing a woman who can't give you one? There it was. The wound beneath every other wound. Not Vanessa. Not Claire. Not Lucas. Michael's voice from 12 years earlier. Maybe with someone else, I could still have a family. Adrian didn't rush to answer. Naomi appreciated that. I might regret things, he said finally. Her face fell slightly. That's honest. I regret things already. He looked at the river. I regret meetings I chose over dinners with Claire. I regret the months after she died when I treated Lucas's grief like a problem money could solve. I regret every night my son needed his father and got an employee instead. He turned toward Naomi. 10 years from now, I may discover new regrets. I'm human. Naomi swallowed. And if one of them is not having another child? Adrian's pale face remained steady. Then that regret will be mine. Naomi stared at him. I won't turn it into your punishment. The city seemed to quiet around her. Adrian continued. I won't wake up one morning and hand you responsibility for a choice I made with open eyes. Naomi looked down. Michael said it didn't matter at first. I'm not Michael. Every man says he's not the man who hurt you. Then don't believe me because I said it. Adrian's answer came calmly. Watch what I do. Naomi's eyes lifted. For how long? As long as you need. Tears gathered before she could stop them. Adrian did not reach for her. There's something else, he said. I already have a child. Lucas is not evidence that my name survives. He's my son. His voice softened. And you were never born to provide evidence that you're worthy of being loved. Naomi closed her eyes. For 12 years, she had carried infertility like an invisible apology. Sorry I can't give you this. Sorry my body failed. Sorry loving me costs more. Adrian wasn't telling her the wound didn't exist. He was refusing to make it the price of admission. What do you want from me? She whispered. Nothing you're required to give. That's not an answer. All right. Adrian took a breath. I want breakfast with you when we're 80. I want you criticizing my coffee. I want you telling me when I'm becoming the kind of man everyone else is too frightened to correct. Naomi laughed through her tears. That sounds exhausting. For me, certainly. His expression softened. I want you. But wanting you doesn't make you mine. Silence. Adrian slowly opened his hand between them. The same gesture he had made in the music room. Palm upward. Waiting. And what if I'm still scared? Naomi asked. Then be scared. That's your advice? No, a faint smile touched his mouth. My advice would probably be terrible. Naomi looked at his hand. You're not going to ask me to move back? No, marry you. Not today. Work for you again. Adrian almost looked offended. Absolutely not. Naomi laughed. Then she placed her hand in his. Adrian's fingers closed gently around hers. No possession. No victory. Just permission received. Months passed. Naomi did not return as a maid. She rented her own apartment and began training to manage a small hospitality business with money she had saved herself. She dated Adrian slowly. Publicly. On her terms. Some people whispered exactly what she had feared they would. Adrian never threatened them. Naomi learned she didn't need him to. One Sunday morning, she entered the Kang mansion through the front door carrying pancakes. Lucas ran down the staircase. He stopped 3 feet away, remembering. Can I hug you? Naomi smiled. Always ask. Is that a yes? Yes. He wrapped his arms around her. Adrian appeared behind him, hair uncombed, wearing a sweater Naomi hated. Don't say it. That sweater is a crime. Good morning to you too. They ate breakfast at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room. Lucas talked too much. Adrian listened. Naomi laughed. Nobody sat in Claire's place because nobody needed to. Claire remained part of Lucas's story. Naomi became part of what came next. Later, as Lucas carried plates to the sink, Adrian reached beneath the table and opened his hand. Naomi looked at it. Years ago, she had believed family was something her body had failed to create. Now she understood it could also be something people made room for, without replacement, obligation, or debt. She placed her hand in Adrian's. He smiled. And in a house once built around power, the most important thing Adrian Kang had learned was something power could never command. Love only meant something when the other person was free to choose it.